This conference will now be recorded.
So we start now the month of Adar, which is the last of the Hebrew months, and Nisan is the first of the Hebrew months when we're counting the months, right? The first month, second month, etc. And this year we have 2 months of Adar. We have what's called the Jewish leap year. The reason being that we Jews follow a lunar calendar as opposed to a solar calendar. A lunar calendar is approximately 29 and a half days times 12 times each month, which comes out to 354. The solar year is 365 days. So the lunar year is 11 days short every year. Islam follows a lunar calendar and does not make any adjustments to their calendar. And therefore, their Ramadan, perhaps if it starts in spring, then it's going to move to winter, then it's going to move to fall, then it's going to be summer, and then back to spring. It's going to keep getting earlier, 11 days earlier every year. And when a person, an Islamic person, who if we're born on the same day, when he celebrates his 34th birthday, I would be celebrating my 33rd birthday. Because at that point, 11 days, 11 days, 11 days, he's got a whole additional year. Why do we have the adjustment that we do have? We have the adjustment because the Torah says clearly that Pesach needs to be Chag HaAviv in the springtime, and Sukkot is the gathering time, and Pesach is the harvesting time. Therefore, hello, so nice to see you, Lenore. Therefore, we need to keep adjusting our calendar in that our holidays will fall out in the seasons that they are meant to fall out. And therefore, we adjust the calendar by adding an extra month. Which month do we add? We double up the last month, since very often there were also a lot of factors went into determining which year should become this extra leap year, and those factors became clearer as we were reaching the springtime. So therefore, that was the month that was added. Now we have a set calendar. The calendar works that we're on a 19-year cycle. So basically, every 19 years, when you turn 19, 38, 57, 70, 57, 70, yeah, 76, etc., 85. So that is when your Hebrew and English birthdays should and would coincide. 7 out of every 19 years is when we add this added month, this Adar Bet, the second month of Adar. Make a simple calculation, right? 19 times 11. So 20, okay, 19 times 11 is, 10 times 19 is 190, right? So 11 times 19 would be about 209, right? And 7 years, you're adding a 30-day month, 207 times 30, 210. That's how we stay in sync, okay? So that's the mathematics for those who enjoy the math. And that's what we have this year. We just now started the month of Adar Aleph, then we'll have Adar Bet, and then we'll have Pesach. Now, this brings up questions as to certain aspects of observance that we have, which is the real Adar. And we'll see at the end that perhaps that question is not even the question. But let's say then, during which Adar do we have these different observances? So let's begin with Purim. And let me slide our paper down just a little bit. Purim observance. So we have a Mishnah in Megillah, that says as follows, and we have it both in Hebrew and English on the sheet that I've emailed to some. Those who are not receiving the email of the source would like to, please let me know. I'm happy to add you to the list, and otherwise it's on the screen. The Mishnah says, Karu et ha-Megillah b'Adar Harishon. If they read the Megillah on the first Adar, Vinit Abra Shana, and then they added on, they made it a Shana Mu'uberet. Mu'uberet literally means pregnant. They made it a pregnant year with that extra appendage, with that extra month of Adar. So now what do they have to do? Korin Ota ba'Adar Sheni. Our Mishnah rules, and we'll soon see there are different opinions, as is often the case. But our Mishnah rules, what must you do? It must be read again during Adar Sheni, which would seem to indicate clearly that the real Adar, or at least the proper Adar for the observance of the holiday of Purim and its mitzvot, is the second Adar. Ein bein Adar Harishon la'Adar Hasheni. There's no difference between those two. Ella, the difference is Kriyat HaMegillah, Matanot le'Evyonim. In other words, the mitzvot of Purim, that takes place on the second Adar. Actually, there are 4 mitzvot of Purim. There's reading the Megillah, there's the gift to the poor, there's Mishloach Manot, there's sending the gifts to people, the food gifts, and there's having a Su'udah. But really, those 3 are all included in Matanot Levyonim, because the idea in giving the gifts to the poor is to enable that they can have a nice Su'udah. And the reason we send Mishloach Manot is to enable people to have a nice Su'udah. So really, those 3 mitzvot are all intertwined. So according to our Mishnah, those Purim mitzvot are observed, are fulfilled in the second month of Adar. If you look down to the next paragraph there, the next little paragraph of Hebrew, there the Gemara discusses that actually there are 2 opinions. Ditanya, as we learned in a Braita, Korat Megillah b'Adar Rishon, if the Megillah was read in Adar Rishon, Vinit Abra Hashana, and the year became a Shana Mu'uberet, added a month, Koranotah b'Adar Sheni, we'll read it in the second Adar, because all the mitzvot Shano go b'Sheni, no go b'Rishon, chutz mi Mikra Megillah. Okay? Of the Sheni also apply to the first month, except for Mikra Megillah. That's got to be done in the second month. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ein Koranotah ba'Adar Sheni. He says, no, do not read it in Adar Sheni, in the second Adar. Shekol mitzvah shenogot b'Sheni, noagot b'Rishon. All the mitzvot of the Sheni are actually done when? In the Rishon. If you did it in the Rishon, you are good to go. There's no reason to do it in the second Adar. So we have our Mishnah's opinion, which we'll see is actually the opinion of Leo, who says Adar Sheni is when the mitzvot should be done. And we have Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi, who says Adar Rishon, the first Adar, is when the mitzvot should be done. The Gemara now goes through. A piece that I didn't copy is, it says in the Megillah, the Kol Shana V'Shana, each and every year. We do the Megillah each and every year. Now, by saying each and every year, that means there's got to be consistency in each and every year. So the one who says the first Adar says you have to be consistent. It's always the Adar that comes after Shvat. Because Adar, of course, is sandwiched between the month of Shvat and the month of Nisan. So he says every year it's the Shvat. So when you have 2 Adars, which one do you pick? The first one, the Adar that follows Shvat. The other one says no, each and every year. Each and every year, it's the Adar before Nisan. So too, when there are two Adars, which one will it be? It'll be the Adar before Nisan. Okay, so that is clearly inconclusive. So the Gemara says as follows: Bishlama, which is now the fourth. Oh, I have to slide down.
Rabbi, could you scroll down a little bit?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. Yes, there we go. The Gemara says as follows: Bishlama, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yossi. I understand the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi. Mistaber Tama. His reasoning is logical. De'ein mavirin al mitzvot. We have a general rule. You don't pass by a mitzvah. The first opportunity you have to perform the mitzvah, you should perform that mitzvah, right? And this in different ways. For men in the morning, we're putting on our talit and our tefillin, right? So you have to make sure the talis, you're supposed to put the talis on first. But if you come to the tefillin first, you have to do the tefillin first. So therefore, arrange your talis and your tefillin in a way that you don't have to go past the tefillin to get to the talis, because you don't want to pass by that mitzvah. You had a meal Friday night, and the balabayit makes the motzi blessing on 2 loaves of bread, and now they're passing around the challah for everyone to take. So you want to be the gentleman or the gentlewoman and pass to others first. Well, take a piece for yourself and then pass, because you have a mitzvah to eat from that challah as part of the meal. So you pass by the mitzvot. So too over here, we understand Rabbi Elazar. The first Adar comes first. That's why it's called Adar Rishon, first Adar. So you're not going to pass by that and wait until the second Adar. Rather, what should you do? At your first opportunity, your first Adar of that year, that you had the opportunity to do the mitzvot, you should jump ahead and do the mitzvot. Ein mavir ala mitzvot. We don't allow mitzvot to pass by. Right? Mitzvah, when a mitzvah comes to your hand, you grab it. Ella, but Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, my ta'ama, what is reasoning? And the Gemara answers the last of the paragraphs that we have over here on this page 1. Ama Rabbi Tavi, Tama, the reasoning, the Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is Mismach Geula L'Geula Adif. We want to have back-to-back redemptions. Nisan, Pesach, is a month of redemption. And therefore, we want to celebrate the Purim redemption back-to-back. Mismach, Geula, L'Geula. Let's have the Geula and Geula one next to the other. Therefore, we forego our usual rule of ein ma'avirin al ha-mitzvot, not to let a mitzvah, an opportunity of a mitzvah pass by, and we jump off to, we push it, we delay until the second Adar, and that way we've got back-to-back, second Adar, Purim, redemption, next month, Nisan, Pesach, Passover, redemption. Now, what's interesting to note is, and we'll discuss this at the very end, they're giving sort of side reasons, as opposed to saying, which is the real Adar? They don't say, the real Adar is the first one, and we added the second, or the real Adar is the second, and we added the first. They're giving these sort of outer explanations. But we'll come to that at the very end. But what's very, very clear is that we celebrate Purim, not the 15th, 14th, 15th of this month, Adar, but it won't be in February, it'll be in March. The next month will be Adar Sheni, the second Adar. That's when we have all of the celebrations. But mind you, that certain Purim aspects will apply also in the first month of Adar. On the 14th and the 15th of the first month of Adar, we will omit certain parts of our davening because some of the more somber parts of daily davening are omitted because these are happy days, celebratory days, even though we're not actually celebrating Purim, but it does apply to a certain degree in the first Adar, but the actual Purim mitzvot, fulfillment, etc., that takes place in the second Adar. Okay. Let's move on now to B'nai Mitzvah. And let me move the page for everybody. Okay. Now, this sometimes, hello, Mr. Basil, this sometimes having 2 months, sometimes having 1 month, leads to some very, very interesting situations. Okay? Let's say one person was born on the 29th of the first month of Adar, and someone else was born. For example, I was born on Bet Adar Bet. I was born on the second day of Adar. Now, I don't recall, but let's say my bar mitzvah, so there was someone who was born 2 days, 3 days before me, 29 of Adar 1. I was born 4 days later, 3 days later, on second day of Adar 2. And the year of our bar mitzvah, 13 years later, we have a situation that there's only one Adar. So what's going to happen? My birthday is the second day of Adar. His birthday is the 29th day of Adar. See, he who was actually born 3 days before I will have my bar mitzvah on the 2nd of Adar. He'll have it on the 29th. I'll have mitzvah almost a month, 27 days before him. So that is a strange situation that comes about. If our bar mitzvah year, as our birth year, would have been a year where again there were 2 Adars, then it's simple. His birthday and his bar mitzvah is the 29th of Adar 1, and my birthday and bar mitzvah is 3 days later on the second day of Adar 2. But when we were born on a year with 2 Adars, then we have that situation that the person who was born later, being that the bar mitzvah year only has 1 Adar, so the bar mitzvah could end up being considerably earlier. Our question is this: when a person was born on a year where there's only 1 Adar, and now the bar mitzvah year has 2 Adars, when is that person's bar mitzvah? So the Shulchan Aruch deals with this. It deals with this in the context of having the requisite 10 people as a minyan. And everyone hears me? We're good? Did you lose me? Oh. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I hope you did after good afternoon. When did you lose me? You lost me again.
Thought I heard you straight through.
Okay. Kathy, do you hear me?
You cut in and out.
I
don't know if anybody else hears that. Maybe it's something with my computer.
No, there is a cutting in and out.
Okay,
Yeah.
he's getting it too.
Okay. You know what? Let me just shut down some other things that I've got going on over here. Okay. Go away. Okay. That's all I got. My technical skills have been pushed to their limit, and I hope you can hear me from this point on. Okay. So the question that, let me get rid of that. Sorry.
There's a kids mode.
Yeah.
Welcome to kids. That's better. Thank you.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Here we go again. Okay. So the question that we're going to have is, when is the bar mitzvah? When a person was born in a year of one Adar, and now the bar mitzvah year, there are two Adars. When is the bar mitzvah going to be? Adar 1 or Adar 2? So Shulchan Aruch, as I mentioned before, discusses this in the context of a minyan, right? Can we count that person or not, right? Getting the requisite quorum of 10 men. So the Shulchan Aruch says as follows: Im na'ar echad nolad, one child was born, the 29th day, la'adar rishon, of first Adar, a year where there are two, Mishana Mu'beret. The nar echar, and another child, nolad, was born, ba'adar sheni, in the second Adar, be'echad bo. So he was born the next day. So he was born one day later. Just 1 second. Or actually 2 days. Yeah, 2 days later. There's 30 days to Adar 1. So he was born 2 days later on the first of Adar 2. Ushnat Yud Gimel, and the 13th year, Eina Me'uberet, is not a double Adar year. Oto Shenola B'Chavtat L'Adar Rishon Sarach L'Hamtin Ad Chavtet L'Adar. The one who was born 29 Adar 1, 29th day of that Adar, the year there's only one Adar, the 29th day of Adar, Liyot Yud Gimel. Liyot Ben Yud Gimel Shana, in order to have his bar mitzvah, to turn 13 years old. V'oto shenolad acharav, and the one who was born 2 days later, be'echad ba'adar hasheni, on the first of Adar Sheni, yeh ben gimel shana, kevan she'igia echad ba'adar shel shnat yud gimel. He will turn 13 on the first day of Adar of the 13th year. So that's the case I mentioned before, the scenario I mentioned before. A person was born later in Adar Bet, but the calendar date is 1 or 2 Adar Bet. The other guy was born 28, 29 Adar 1. Now bar mitzvah, there's only one Adar. The first one, the one who was born 2 days later, gets bar mitzvah on 1-2 of Adar, and the one who was born on the 29th will have to wait till the 29th. Now the Ramah says, Umi shenolad ba'adar sheni, v'naseh bar mitzvah b'shnata ibor, eino naaseh bar mitzvah ad adar sheni. He will not become bar mitzvah until, right now, if, like I said before, if both years, the birth year and the bar mitzvah year, had 2 Adars, then it will certainly have the 2 Adars. Let's go to the English. Ramah. And someone who was born in Adar and is made bar mitzvah in a leap year is not made a bar mitzvah until the second Adar. Okay. So similar to Purim, when we have a person was born, there was only one Adar. The bar mitzvah year, there are 2 Adars. Similar to Purim, we go with the second Adar, but for a different reason. Over here, of course, there's no idea of having back-to-back geula. So why do we wait for the second? Why do we wait for the second? Why shouldn't we grab the mitzvah when it comes? Why don't we grab that mitzvah when it comes? Any ideas out there? So bar mitzvah is having reached a certain stage of obligation. And that is only when it's been the full 13 years. So before that point, Adar comes, we don't say the mitzvah comes to your hand, grab it. Who knows if it's his mitzvah yet? That person's going to read Torah for us. That person's going to lead the services for us. That person's going to count for the minyan. We don't say the kid reaches 12, grab the mitzvah, count him for a minyan. He's not yet fully bar mitzvah. He's not yet fully of age. So therefore, when it comes to bar mitzvah, which is an obligation, we don't know that there is an obligation until, for sure, there is an obligation. And it only becomes clear for sure once it reaches the second Adar. Let him start putting on his tefillin already, the first Adar. Because you can put on tefillin before your bar mitzvah, and that way you get trained in doing it. And that way we're covering all bases. But in terms of being assured and knowing that we've reached that point, that's only when it comes to the second Adar. So when it comes to bar mitzvah, it seems to be more of an unsurety. Which one is the real Adar? And therefore, being that we're talking about an obligation, so therefore we don't definitely reach that until one. Okay, let's move on now to Yahrtzeit. What does one do on a Yahrtzeit? So typically, one says Kaddish. If one is able to, one would lead the services. Why are we doing that on a Yahrtzeit? What we're doing is we're looking to bring merit to the deceased. Okay? We're looking to bring merit to the deceased. These halachot are actually mentioned in Shulchan Aruch 568, Taf Kuf Samechet, which is in the midst of the laws of fasting. Because many have the custom to fast on a Yahrtzeit. That this is a day of judgment for the deceased, evidence that this is the day that their neshama was taken, and therefore, Yahrtzeit. Another minhag that has developed over the years is not to fast. On the contrary, to make a little bit of a kiddush, to bring food and let people all make brachot, and let all these added brachot that are being made, let them serve le'iloi neshama, to elevate the neshama. But in the context of this idea of fasting, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, deals with, well, which month should one fast? And for us, those who don't fast, that would translate into which month is the Yahrtzeit observed? Which month does one say the Kaddish is? Which month would one make a Kiddush? which month is the Yahrtzeit observed? So the Shulchan Aruch says as follows: Kisheira yom shemet aviv o imo. If the day upon which a person's father or mother, parent, passed away was be'adar, was in the month of Adar, v'hashana me'ubar, and now the Yahrtzeit, it's a leap year. That's going to be happening 7 out of every 19 years after a parent passes away. So now, if they passed away on a year where there were 2 Adars, so then, if the Yahrtzeit is in a year of 2 Adars, whichever Adar they passed away in, that is the Adar that you will observe, that one would observe the Yahrtzeit. The question is, and if they passed away in a year where there were 2 Adars, and now the Yahrtzeit year there's only 1 Adar, there's only one choice. That's simple. The question is, on a year they passed away there was 1 Adar, and now on this Yahrtzeit year that we're starting, right, that we're entering right now, there are 2 Adars. Which Adar should be the one to observe the Yahrtzeit? The Shulchan Aruch, which is the custom followed by the Svardim, says Yitaneh ba'Adar Bet. Shulchan Aruch says go with Adar Bet. And we can understand that approach, because Adar Bet seems to be the real Adar. Look at Purim. Look at Bar Mitzvah. Adar Bet seems to be the real Adar, and therefore Adar Bet would be the observance. However, Haggah, the Ramah, has a different opinion. And this is actually a very, very important lesson we have over here. As Rav Yosef Karo in Tzfat was writing his code of Jewish law, Rav Moshe Isserles in Europe was writing his magnus opus, his code of Jewish law. Now, each one of them, the vast majority was the same, but there are differences when it comes to different customs and different practices and approaches that had developed over the centuries in different places. So when the Ramah wanted to publish and he saw the Rav Yosef Karo already came out with his Shulchan Aruch, he was in a quandary. If he was going to publish his own Shulchan Aruch, so to speak, then we have a situation where we have almost 2 different Torahs. There's the Torah for the Sfardim and the Torah for the Ashkenazim, and that had a very destructive effect of almost splitting us up into 2 different nations. So therefore, what did he do? The Ramah shelved his own magnus opus. And what did he do, though? He added on notes to the Shulchan Aruch of Rav Yosef Karo. He has a gloss, and in certain places he'll comment, as he does over here, and he says, V'yesh omrim, but there are those that say, meaning don't look at what Rav Yosef Karo, known as the Mechaber, the author, wrote, that we do Adar Sheni, the second Adar. Don't view that as the only opinion. You should know there are other opinions. V'yesh omrim, there are those that say, Diyit aneh berishon, that he should fast on the first one, meaning the Yahrtzeit should be observed in the first Adar. Then he adds parenthetically, Im lo shemet b'shnat ha'ibah ba'adar sheni da'az no'agin latnot b'sheni. Unless the death year was, the year of passing, was 2 Adars, and he passed away in the second Adar, so then on a Yahrtzeit year which has 2 Adars, you'd go with the second Adar. But there are those that, but in the case that we're discussing, where the person died during a regular 1 Adar year, and now like this year, the Shulchan Aruch says go with the second Adar. That's the Yahrtzeit. The Ramah says there are those that say go with the first one, and he concludes v'chein haminhag, and that is the custom amongst the Ashkenazic communities, litanot berishon, to fast on the first one, that we treat the first Adar as the Yahrtzeit. That is the Ashkenazic minhag. Umiu yesh machmir litanot b'shnehem. There are those who take on a stringency and they fast both of them. They'll treat both of them as, and for us that we're not, most of us are not fasting, right? So one could say Kaddish on both. One could sponsor or make a little Kiddush on both. So it would seem that the approach of the Ramah is that being that this is to give honor to the deceased and to help elevate the soul of this parent or close relative for one whom is saying the Kaddish. So then we apply the usual rule of Ein Mavirin ala Mitzvot. If I have the opportunity to give that special honor this month, then why would I wait for another month? Let me grab opportunity to give honor right away. But it's best to do both, right? Sort of misafek, right? Well, which one is the real Adar? We're not sure, so cover your bases and make sure you do it at both of them. That's the simple understanding. But Rav Shechter of YU, one of the Rosh Yeshivas of Yeshiva University, gave a shiur on this that I was able to see a manuscript of it. And in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, he explained this in a different manner, in a very, very beautiful manner. So I have that also on the sheet that I shared. So let me scroll down. Rav Shechter in the name of Rav Soloveitchik. Okay, so let's learn through this together, my friends. The Tanoim in Megillah, those are the two opinions that we began with. Is it Adar, do we celebrate Purim Adar 1 or Adar 2? Had a major dispute regarding the observance of Purim during a leap year. Should the Megillah be read on the 14th day of the first month of Adar or of the second month of Adar? The Tanoim give seemingly tangential reasons for their views of when the Megillah should be read and don't tackle the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is which day is the real Purim? Which Adar is the real Adar? They don't tackle that, but rather they give these tangential reasons. Well, first opportunity, you should grab it. That's the reason for Adar 1. No, back to back. That's better, right? That's why we do it Adar 2. But they don't touch upon which is the real Purim, which is the real Adar. Therefore, it would appear that both Adars are the real Adar. And the 14th of both months is really Purim. In fact, the 15th of each month is also considered a day of Purim, since that's the day that's celebrated in Israel, in Jerusalem. And thus, a regular year has 2 days of Purim, and a leap year has 4 days of Purim. So how do we understand this? What do you mean? It's Purim. It's all Purim, and he explains beautifully. Second paragraph. The Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch point out that it's forbidden to fast or to deliver a eulogy on any of the days of Purim, whether one lives in Jerusalem and celebrates the 15th, or lives outside Jerusalem and celebrates the 14th. We leave out Tachanun. I mentioned before, the more somber aspects of our morning davening are omitted in a leap year on all 4 days of Purim. Those davening adjustments, that which we omit 14 1 and 14 and 15 of Adar 2. The question when one reads the Megillah is not a question of which day is the real day of Purim, but rather on which of the 4 days should one observe the mitzvot of Purim. For example, Pesach is a 7-day Yom Tov. When can one observe the Seder? First night in Israel. Outside of Israel, first 2 nights. That's when we observe the Seder. Can we observe the Seder on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th day of Pesach? We cannot. It's Pesach, but the Seder is limited to first night, two nights. Rosh Hashanah biblically is a 24-hour Yom Tov. We have the mitzvah of shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But when can it be done? Only during the day. One cannot fulfill the mitzvah at night. I'm not going to get to shul the next day. And there's someone eating by me Rosh Hashanah night who knows how to blow shofar. Can I have him blow the shofar for me? I'm not fulfilling the mitzvah. Blowing the shofar the night of Rosh Hashanah is like blowing the shofar a day after Rosh Hashanah. Nice job on the ram's horn, but it's not a mitzvah of. So even though we have 24, 25 hours of Rosh Hashanah, the shofar mitzvah needs to be done during this segment. Even though we have 7, 8 days of Pesach, the Seder mitzvah has to be done during this segment of the holiday. So too, similarly, all 4 days are really Purim. But one cannot read the Megillah on whichever day one chooses. So the question is, of these 4 days of 15, Adar 1, 14, 15, Adar 2, the question is, which segment of Purim should the Megillah be read on? So they're not arguing which is the real Purim, which is the real Adar. They're all real Adar. They're all real Purim. The question is, once we have these different days of Purim in different months, which should be the one selected for the mitzvah of Megillah? That's why it's tangential arguments. They're not arguing which is the real Adar, which is the real Purim. They're both real Adar. They're both real Purim. The question is, when should the mitzvah be done? Oh, then it makes a lot of sense. One Tan is of the opinion, don't postpone it to the 2nd month, since we are not allowed to forego an opportunity to ein ma'avirin ala mitzvos. We don't pass by the mitzvos. So you want to know which one you should choose? Which Purim day should be chosen for the fulfillment of Megillah mitzvah? The first opportunity you have, 14th Adar 1. The second Tana insisted that we read the Megillah on the 2nd Purim. Why? Because that's closer to Pesach. To connect Mismach, Geula, Geula, Adif, the Gemara said. We want to connect the Geulot of Purim and Pesach back to back. So that's why they're not arguing which one is the real Adar, which one is the real Purim. They're all the real Adar. They're both the real Purim. The question is, the mitzvah of Megillah reading, on which Purim day should it be? Purim day Adar 1, Purim day Adar 2, and for that they gave their reasons. Either grab the first or have it back to Pesach. Now this will give us a whole different view now on what the Ramah said about Yahrtzeit. Right, the Shulchan Aruch said, the Mechaber said, you do the 2nd Adar. The Ramah said, others say you do the 1st Adar. Fair enough. And he said it's best to do both. Maybe he's saying not out of since we're not sure, cover your bases and do both. The observance of the Yahrtzeit is not purely a matter of minhag, custom. Rather, the assumption is that since a person died on this day, perhaps this day is still a day of judgment, Yom Hadin, for the deceased, or perhaps for the entire family, and as such ought to carry with it certain observances, fasting, reciting of Kaddish, extra brachot if one's not fasting, learning Mishnayos, in order to mitigate the din. If we assume that both months of Adar are really Adar, then both possible days of the Yahrtzeit may be viewed as Yemei Hadin, as days of judgment for that person and even for the family. And therefore, we want to do whatever we can do to elevate the soul, to elevate ourselves, the family, and the soul of the deceased on that day of Din. And hence, the Yahrtzeit ought to be observed in both Adars, not merely out of doubt, misafek, but rather as a certainty. So that is Rav Soloveitchik's incredible explanation of how we view the 2 months of Purim and how we would view the Yahrtzeit. So to summarize, the Gemara had a debate, 2 different opinions. Which Adar do we go with? And we the second Adar. We took that to mean normally, that is the real Adar. But the way Rav Soloveitchik is explaining, maybe not. Maybe both are the real Adars. The question, though, is when would we observe the mitzvot? And we observe all the mitzvot of Purim on that second month of Adar, the 14th and 15th, which comes out this year, March 17 and 18. Thursday, so Megillah reading is Wednesday night, the 16th, Thursday, the 17th of March. When it comes to Bar Mitzvah, so there we're talking about an absolute obligation. The absolute obligation that we can count this as part of the minyan, that this young man can serve as our representative, leading us in davening, and we are fulfilling our mitzvah through him, that can only be done once we are assured that he is of age to do that. And therefore, the bar mitzvah celebration will be on, not just celebration, the bar mitzvah observance, reaching b'nei mitzvah. The time that he actually comes b'nei mitzvah for sure, that we can count on, is the second Adar. When it comes to Yahrtzeit, there it's a matter of giving honor to the deceased and elevating the deceased on this day, which might still be a Yom Din, a day of judgment for that person. And there we apply the idea, the mitzvah came to your hand, grab it, do it. And therefore, the minhag of Ashkenaz is the first Adar. The minhag of Sfard is the second Adar. Looking at it from their point of view, I would imagine that that is the real Adar. The Ramah concludes, if you can do both, do both. And again, according to Rav Soloveitchik, being that they're both Adar, they're both the real Adar, then they're both Yemei Din, days of judgment, and therefore one should do whatever they can do to elevate themselves and the soul on both of those days. And therefore, ideally, one would observe the Yahrtzeit on both Adar 1 and Adar 2 in a situation where a person passed away on a year that there was only one Adar. Again, if the person passed away in a year where there were 2 Adars, then on the Yahrtzeit year, if there are 2 Adars, one would simply follow the person passed Adar 1, the Yahrtzeit's Adar 1. The person passed Adar 2, the Yahrtzeit is Adar 2. Okay, my friends, good. So that is as we're about to go into these joyous months of Adar, and let us hope and pray that as we rule that we do the second Adar because we want to have back-to-back Geula, back-to-back redemption, let this be a year of redemption for the Jewish people, safety for the Jewish people, and Geula Shalema. B'mheira v'yameinu. Amen. Okay, my friends. I hope I wasn't
Rabbi,
continuing to cover a lot. Yes, Basil.
non-leap year in Adar. When you have two Adars, the Bar Mitzvahs are in the second Adar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Unless the person was born on a year where there were two Adars,
Okay.
then if they were born two. But if they're born on a one Adar year, the Bar Mitzvah would be on the second. And now the Bar Mitzvah year is a leap year, two Adars. We wait until the second for that Bar Mitzvah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Let me wish everybody a good Shabbos. Yes.
I have a question too. Sorry. I have a question too. Is it okay?
Yes, please, Ruthie.
Ask you.
Yes.
Wanted to know. You said in the beginning that the calendar, the Jewish calendar, goes also by the sun, not only by the moon. So how is that?
No. Yeah. So the Jewish calendar, our months are lunar months. Okay. So therefore, if we were only following a lunar calendar, then we would lose 11 days every year. So if Pesach was April 15th, next year it's April 4th. The next year it is March 23rd. Next year, March 12th. Next year, March 1st. Next year, February 17th. Then February 6th. Next year, we're in January. That's what would happen if, as we follow a lunar year, we would follow the lunar year without making any adjustments. But the Torah tells us Pesach needs to be springtime, and Sukkot needs to be gathering time. So therefore, the Torah, in telling us to do that, is telling us you have to adjust. And therefore, we adjust our lunar calendar to the solar seasons by 7 out of every 19 years, adding a month, Adar Beth, a second month of Adar, and that way we stay in sync with the solar seasons.
I understand. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear before. I hope that helped to clarify it. Good. Any other questions?
A request, Rabbi, just to send the source material to my email box.
Okay, I will do that. I'll try to remember to do that in advance next time, Ken.
Cool.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'll add you
Thank
to
you.
the list of the early receivers.
Yeah,
For Ruth,
if that can be done consistently, that'd be great.
Yes, very good. I'll
for
do my
Ruthie's
best to remember.
benefit, for Ruthie's benefit,
Yes.
that's why Ramadan in the Muslim world floats through the year, because they only observe the lunar calendar.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, the Muslim, really? The Muslim.
Yes, the Muslims have a lunar calendar that doesn't get adjusted, so their
Right.
holidays are earlier every year, and if they started out in summer the next year, or pretty soon it's going to be spring, right? And then it's going to be winter, then it's going to be fall, then it's back to summer. They keep coming back 11 days every year. Yeah.
Right.
But they don't need a lunar solar calendar anyway, because they're not an agricultural people and traditionally nomadic. So
Could be,
there's no
yeah.
reason for sticking
Yeah.
around for the crops to grow.
Could be. I hear
Interesting.
that. Yeah. But the reason we do it, though, Ken, is not because we were necessarily an agricultural
Yeah.
people, but because that is what the Torah says, that Pesach's got to be Chodesh Ha'aviv. We have to celebrate it in the month of spring. And that's why
Yep.
we're constantly adjusting. Yes. But
Well,
that is an interesting.
Hashem
Very nice.
always says that, follow the Torah. But I kind of like to think of Hashem as being very pro-agriculture as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine so. Enough miracles go into things that grow. We should appreciate it and involve ourselves. I'll go with that.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, my friends. I
Bye-bye.
wish you all a good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. Good seeing everybody. And those that we can't see over Shabbos, look forward to seeing you over Shabbos.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Bye.
Shalom, everybody.